1, pure potentiality. One word. How did you feel?
Excited. I was excited.
Okay, Mark is excited. What about Danielle?
Enlightened.
Enlightened. Oliver?
One word. Oh,
One
man.
word.
I know.
I would say deep.
Deep, yes. And for me, it was mind-blowing, as I mentioned earlier, mind-blowing. So why don't we enlighten everybody else on this call, and maybe in your own words, if you do the best you can, summarizing chapter 1, pure potentiality, from your perspective, one at a time. How would you summarize what he's talking about in chapter 1? Who wants to go first?
I'll
Mark?
go.
I think Danielle said she'll go.
Oh, Danielle?
I can go next. Go ahead, Danielle.
That whatever it is that you put your mind to, you can do. Similar like to what we were saying before. And the first step to doing that is to go inward. And we look a lot to the outside, things on the outside of us to kind of validate what we do, how we feel, what we think, what we say. But this chapter really reminds you that it first starts with you. So once you start with yourself, and like we're saying with the Ross, resetting and telling yourself positive things, giving yourself the things that you actually need from a spiritual perspective, not just a physical, then you're able to manifest those things as you, the more you continue doing that, the getting still, the meditation, the looking inward. Once you're able to do that, and it could start at 5 minutes. I know in the chapter it mentioned a matter of discipline and 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening of meditation. Even 5 minutes, 2 minutes of a meditation to start is even highly effective, because I believe in starting small with certain things, especially if it's something new. So taking the time to be gentle with yourself and just knowing that you're not in any competition with anything. The chapter even said that as well, that it's not a matter of spirit being better than ego. It just is. And so we just are. So taking the time to be with ourselves, whether it be 20 minutes, an hour, 2 minutes a day, you just have to be disciplined to make that time to tap in and realize what your potential is. It may not happen right away. It may happen right away, but definitely it's a practice that you implement into your life that will allow you to reach further and further into your potential.
Thank you, Danielle.
Well said. I'll just kind of summarize very quickly in another light, but just tapping into your inner potential and tapping into your spirit through, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, I think, but through meditation, through non-judgment, which I thought was very, very interesting, and just being able to tap into that law of pure potentiality by looking inward, right? And having that balance between, I think what he called object referral versus self-referral, right? So the object is your ego and all of the things that are external to you, versus the self, which is what is internal to yourself.
Okay, I'll go. I had to read it like probably, I think around 6 or 7 times, because you know, it's for me now. It's all about actions, and you know, when it comes to pure potentiality, potential potentiality is just like we mentioned earlier. We all were born to do great things, right? And some of us probably know it, but we never get there. We never get to where we want in life. So even if you don't know it, we all think, you know, I want certain house, I want certain car, whatever you imagine, some of us never get there. And there's a few things that happen why we don't get there because we don't understand the true potentiality. So this first chapter really kind of dig deep into understanding, and I know Mark touched on it a little bit. A book gives two different perspectives. One is inwards, one is outwards. And if you start changing certain patterns inwards, guess what? You're gonna be able to reach your true potential. You're gonna be attracted to certain things that you really want in your life, whatever abundance, wealth, whatever it is. So it really focus on what is it? Not object. What is it, Mark? Referral.
The self referral.
Self referral, right? So the inner self. Once you start with the inner self, then you're really on your way. That's why I'll wrap up the first chapter.
Thank you. So what I asked the readers to do so that we could have a guided discussion on Sundays is to submit something a day before. We have a form that we're filling out. It's due every Saturday, so the day before we meet. And on the form, it asks two questions. One is summarize the chapter from your perspective, and number two is your two takeaways. So I'm just going to read from the form that we filled out for chapter 1, and then I'll ask everyone to add to it or to elaborate more on what they put on the form. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask Mark, Oliver, and Danielle, can you define what is pure potentiality? What is Deepak Chopra talking about when he says pure potentiality?
Well, could we, before we answer that question, can you give us your take on the first chapter?
How would I summarize it? Yeah, I would summarize it as what Deepak is saying is that we're born with infinite creativity. We're born with infinite creativity and a field of possibilities that have not been manifested yet. And that by doing some simple practices or exercises on a regular basis, you can actually hone in on that infinite creativity and field of possibilities. That's how I would summarize the chapter. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I'm going to read what you guys put on your form to see. Okay, so what Danielle had put in the question was, I put on the form, in 1 to 3 sentences, summarize this chapter. And Danielle put, the phrases like, you can do anything you put your mind to, and prayer is the talking to God. Meditation is when you listen for the answer. That came to her mind when she read the chapter. In us is truly the power to create anything, do anything we want to do. Our purpose lies within that. What our spirit leads us to do, we can do. The first step is hearing what spirit is telling us to get still, meditate, and listen. And then Oliver summarized by saying, in order to be successful, you have to connect with our true self. In order to connect with your true self, you must align with the root, which is your spiritual self. In order to align with your spiritual self, you must have a balance between movement and stillness. Movement is our regular thoughts during everyday life. And stillness is quiet time. Take time out to create stillness, because the stillness is very important for our creativity. And Mark said, the first chapter is about unlocking your potential and balancing between the self referral, which is your spirit, and object referral, which is your ego. And my summary was, our connected and collective spirit holds infinite unmanifested possibilities that are available, ready, and waiting to be manifested. Practicing specific mental and physical exercises will uncover and enable us to reach our full potential. In other words, success. Anybody here listening in want to comment on anything we've said to this point? Have you heard of this stuff before?
Okay, can I make a comment?
Yes.
I was about to type it, but easier to say it. I think while such writers, and he's not the only one, while such writers they give a lot of information, I think for the novice, it provides a good sort of a framework on which the more experienced person could build upon. So to accept what he's saying without putting in your experiences, perhaps is not presenting the full picture. It's like a Kaibana costume. It's the same frame almost every year, and they tweak different parts of it and make a totally different headpiece or costume. So I'm pretty sure I read most of that book a long time ago. I don't remember a lot about it, but in general, it's like once you put that in your mind, and you know it influences how you operate to some extent, even if you don't realize. So I would caution that you know, there used to be a saying that find your passion and go after it with everything, and I have found it more useful to me that because I know a lot of people who never found their passion, but they were passionate in everything that they were doing. And I seem to like that a little more because I did a lot of different things in my life, and I was passionate about all of them, from riding motorbike to teaching to everything else. So I think we have to, you know, we have to put those writings into the context of our lives.
Thank you. And I see Carol has a question in the chat. She's asking, what do we consider success? I'm actually going to ask Carol to lead that discussion. What do you, Carol, consider success?
I asked a question for you guys to answer. You guys are reading the book.
You mean, what does Deepak consider success?
No. From the first chapter, he was talking about success. And what does it success means to the individuals? Mark, Camille, Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver, you can start and then I can take it from there.
Yeah, I can go. Simple, happiness.
But happiness is fleeting.
So success, so as human beings, right? You want to get to a place in your life, and it's all different to all of us. That place is happiness. So it is not money, it's not fame, it's not all of that. Sometimes your happiness comes with that.
Yeah, but happiness is fleeting. It is temporary.
So if I could maybe add something from my perspective, it's actually funny because I went for a walk with my eldest son, right, who's 12, and we were talking about this same topic. Success to different people will be different, right? Like it's not, I can't tell you what success is to me may not be success to you.
True.
Right? And it's not necessarily And I think part of this chapter is focusing on, it's not necessarily objects or material things, right? The success that I believe that he's talking about here is more spiritual, and it's more being one with yourself and starting to understand who you really are, right? Rather than, because he classifies two different things. One is your ego versus your inner self, right? And the ego is what people see, what you want people to see, how you want people to judge you, how you're looked upon by others, right? Versus focusing on the true happiness that I believe Oliver was just mentioning is internal. You are at one with yourself, you know, without having that ego portion of it is what your outer shell is, but internally, you know, you are just you. You don't worry about any of that other stuff. So the success to me is to understand that you know, your inner self and your spirit, right? That portion.
Being one with the Christ child, which is you being one with spirit.
It's very, I would say it's similar, that definition. So yes, I would look at it that way.
Oliver, 30 seconds, and then we're going to Danielle.
Yeah, sure. I want us to understand that success is, and I want to add, to success is not really a destination, right? It's actually your journey from where you are to actually where you end up, whenever you end up. So that journey, you're very happy. You understand yourself. You're spiritual. You align yourself. Everything is aligned.
Thank you, Oliver. Danielle, to you, what is success?
Certain level of contentment in your life, and not the kind of contentment where you are not progressing, where you're just kind of at that plateau and not increasing or decreasing, but the contentment that where you are is you've accepted that. So your full acceptance of who you are, what comes with that, what comes with where you are. To me, that's success. Because then you're not looking for other things to fill a void, in a sense. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Oliver, is that what you meant by happiness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like joy.
Yeah.
Like a joy. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I asked Carol, what is her definition of success, right? Because I knew it wasn't going to be the same answer across the board. It's really perspective. For me, my definition of success is reaching my full potential at any given point in time. So just drawing from what Danielle, Oliver, Mark just said, right? That, you know, at every step of the way, with every challenge, I am free to reach my full potential. That to me, success. Carol, I think it was John and then Carol.
Who, John?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so in your 20s, a lot of people, you ask them what they mean by success, and they say, hey, I want to buy my house. I want to have $1 million. But in a similar book to what you have there, I don't know, I had another book, I don't know if I gave it to my daughter or if I still have it. This guy drew a square and divided it into 4 quadrants. And he was making the argument that in one quadrant, you would have health, because a lot of people kill themselves doing things and they don't pay attention to their health. Another quadrant, of course, is to have a certain amount of wealth. Another one is spirituality. What kind of a person are you? And the 4th one is social and family. So some people focus on wealth and ignore family and ignore health and everything else. Or they focus on, on one and ignore the others. Where he's making the argument that true success really is to achieve a high level in those 4 departments. That's my take.
Thank you. Carol, you had something to add?
Not really, because success is different for everybody. For me, success is just finding the spiritual being within me, which is contentment, which is peace of mind, which is non-judgmental, which is so many things, but just finding the spiritual Christ within me. And when I am able to find that, which I'm trying to attain, because right now I'm just loving myself, then I think I will reach success. But it's a growing being.
Yeah.
Every day it's different.
Yes.
And I think we're going to get to it, Camille. I don't
Yeah.
know if you are, but
I have another question next.
I gotta want to just to mention that, you know, Deepak mentions and focuses on being still, being quiet, and to get to that inner peace, you need to take time for yourself, time alone, and actually just be silent, right? And be silent, and it's a part of meditation, but to be silent with yourself and quieten the noise within your mind, because there's so many things going on. This is why I was talking about the reticular activating system, right? Why I was talking about that earlier today is because it's part of your all these things going through your brain. 2 million different things, points of data at any point in time, looking at YouTube, Facebook, whatever, all these ads, all this information that's just flowing through your brain, right?
Distractions.
Yeah, distractions. That's exactly what it is. So you need time to be still, to be quiet, so that the things that are important to you, those are the things that you are putting out there to the universe, so that your RAS, that your, you know, the universe you can put it out there and it will come back to you, right?
Be still and know that I am.
Yes, yes, right?
So that's the perfect segue, Mark, because I do want to talk. I was going to say that for later, but I can't take it anymore. I have to hear, especially from the readers. How easy or difficult is that idea or that concept of just being still? Just being quiet for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. How easy or difficult is that? From your perspective, Oliver, Danielle, Mark, then we'll go to everybody else.
For me, it was very hard. I don't say the word hard. I never actually say the word hard, but it was very, very challenging.
And that's surprising, Oliver, because what did you say for your quality? Is that you're a risk taker?
Yeah.
You know, you just jump in, you accept every challenge, not a problem. But this one you're saying was hard.
Yeah, this was tough.
Why is that?
It was tough because, and Mark kind of alluded to it, there's a lot of stuff's happening here. Lots, like per second, like lots. Not in a bad way, just many things happening. If it's not happening, it's happening thinkingly. So now, in order for me now to stop and still, that's a whole interruption, man. That's an interruption my body is not ready for. And the more I, every time, the more I read it, the more I listen to it, and I know, understand, and obviously I'm going to force myself to have that still moment because I know it will pass, right? But it is still tough, and I tried it three times, 4 times of being still, and it's caught halfway because I can't go you know, as long as, you know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Mark, you said I can't do it. My body would not do it. So you were telling yourself your
Yeah.
words.
Yeah, 100%. I totally 100%. So beyond that, though, what I'm trying to get at too is, you see, the stillness that brings out the creativity and the pure potentiality. That interruption is needed because it's a pattern interruption, right? The pattern that's I've been having for the last 47 years, that's what got me here today. If I have the same pattern, where I'm going to be. Where I'm at today, that's not where I want to be. So that pattern has to change. That pattern has to interrupt purposely. And the
Okay.
stillness is what interrupt that pattern purposely in order for me to tap into what we call pure potentiality. So because I understand that now, and to Carol's point, and I just use the word just to get, you know, so you guys know what I was thinking. To Carol's point now, those can't is not happening. Those can't is going to lead into I can, I will, I must, I'm going to, I am doing that because I'm going to interrupt that pattern purposely.
The way
I hope you guys don't mind. I just want to read that one paragraph of that section where he's talking about this, because he's talking and he says, what happens when you go into this experience of silence? Initially, your internal dialogue becomes even more turbulent. So this is what I think Oliver was experiencing.
yes.
You feel an intense need to say things. I've known people who go absolutely crazy the first day or two when they commit themselves to an extended period of silence. A sense of urgency and anxiety comes over them. And I think Oliver was mentioning that. But as they stay with the experience, the internal dialogue begins to quieten. As soon as the silence becomes profound. This is because after a while, the mind gives up. It realizes there's no point in going around and around if you, the self, the spirit, the choice maker, are not going to speak, period.
And that's when everything interrupts.
Right.
Yep.
Then the internal dialogue quietens. You begin to experience the stillness of the field of pure potentiality. I really like this book. I don't know. I'm tapping into, you know, the things that he's saying. So.
May I interrupt?
Yeah.
The thing about it, when people start to, when people try to meditate, your thought pattern just goes crazy. And the more you try to resist thinking, that's the more your thoughts go crazy. What you have to do is say, okay, acknowledge what you're thinking. Okay, this is what I'm thinking. It's all good. Now, I'm going to stop. And you're going to stop for a few seconds. And then when the thoughts start again, you acknowledge it. And then it will stop. Because the more you try to fight it, the more it's going to keep coming at you. But you start very small, like 5 minutes. Every day you do 5 minutes. And eventually you can get into 4 or 5 hours of meditation. But the minute you try to fight it, that is when it's going to fight you and win. You start, okay, I'm thinking about this. All right, good. Go through that thought pattern. And then you said, okay, stop. And then you find yourself not thinking looking for something to think about. And then you just, okay, no, I'm not going to think about that. And then you just start staying very quietly. You could hum, or you could start saying something affirmative to yourself. And if you can't think of two things at the same time. So if you're just thinking, okay, something positive, I can do this, I can do this, you find a mantra. I can do this, I can do this, I can. And when you're saying I can do this, you can't think of this 100 different things running through your thoughts. You can't dual, as they say, have two dual minds.
And as you mentioned, you know, saying something affirmative, he was using the metaphor of throwing a stone into a still pond and watching it ripple. And when you put that affirmation out there, once your mind is quiet and your body is quiet, that's when you're putting your intentions out into the universe for it to come back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So could I just interject? I remember a poem from a long time ago that read the first couple of lines were like this, what is this life if full of care? We have no time to stand and stare. And it goes on. So what I find works for me is that if I want to change my thought process or I'm getting overwhelmed, I get up, I put on my shoe and I go take a walk by myself. I don't just stop and stay in the house and do something else. Get up and go and walk. Does wonders for the mind, because then you see other things. You see a bird fly, you see this, you see that, you see flowers coming and bloom, you see all sorts of different things.
Yep.
And that distraction sort of frees the mind to a large extent. And a lot of things that you're supposed to do and you forgot it, it comes back to your mind, you remember things. And so there are a lot of ways that there are things that people can do to bring them to a point where they can start again.
With regards to stillness and how hard or easy that is to do.
Yeah, it's not always an easy thing to do. Meditation's been something I've been doing for a long time, on and off again, on and off again. There are some days where I can sit very comfortably for 10, 15 minutes, lose track of time, especially now in COVID and we're home, and meditate, and actually really get the breathing slow and hear what my spirit self is saying to me. And then there are other days where, like, 2 minutes in and my brain is just still going and going and going. One of the things that we do in the deep breathing and yoga sessions, we do the 5 to 10 minute meditations. And one of the common themes is that, yes, like you were saying, Carol, with the thoughts that they come, that to Mark's point of non-judgment is that we don't judge ourselves for thinking the thoughts, because that's what the mind is made to do. We think. You just let them pass. You just let them pass. And sometimes that's all the meditation is sitting there to let the thoughts pass. Vulnerable moment here. Sometimes the anxiety gets to be a lot and the tears are just coming and the tears are hot. And I find myself in those moments where I'm asking the questions like, how am I going to do this? How's this going to happen? How's this? And my ears literally shut off. I can't hear anything more than what's going on in my brain. And then as the tears and the tears come and the ears turn off is when I can hear fully inside. I'm not hearing myself. I'm not hearing the mad thoughts going on in my head. I'm hearing spirit purely in those moments. So I feel like it's relative based on, sometimes it's relative based on your scenario, based on the situation, but it's practice. And with the deep breathing, they invite you to focus on the breath. So when the thoughts keep coming, you let them pass, focus on the in and out of the breath. And when you're listening to your breath, when you're breathing in and out like that, it forces the body to slow down. It forces the mind to slow down. And like the book says, it just gives up. And then you're kind of set now into a quiet space. I wrote this that came to me after reading the first chapters. Think of the quiet, dark space of the womb. So much potential. Our full potential is created in that silence. Even though the babies can hear what's going on outside, that space inside is totally dark, totally quiet, and the fullest of the potential is being developed in that being born. The other thought was of the seed being planted in the dark soil. It's not being affected by any of the outside elements, just what's around it in that darkness of the soil. No sound, no nothing. And everything that great tree or bush or plant or whatever is to become starts in that one little seed planted in the dark, quiet, still space, not bothered or touched by anything. So if there's anything that I take away from meditation and quiet still time, is that regardless of how it turns out, I'm already adding into my potential. I'm giving it space to grow within that time frame. So whether it's 2 minutes, 2 hours, a day, a week, you know, of silence, the potential is being grown there. That's my takeaway.
This is why it pays to have a poet/writer amongst us, that she could grace us with those types of, powerful, profound metaphors. Thank you, Danielle. And Carol was like almost jumping off her couch when you were talking. For me,
before you say anything, Camille, my heart is so full. It's bursting. Because listening to Daniela talk, I know there is so much potential in her. I can feel it. So, and also, if every youth can think like her, the future will be explosive.
Yes. And she's raising a daughter, right? So anything she's learning, she's passing it on to her daughter, right? So yeah.
Yes, I am. Wow, Carol, thank you.
Oh, girl.
Just a couple of things, if I may, before I bid you guys good night. Just want to let Danielle know that she is not the only one that's going through this kind of a dilemma. A very good friend of ours, just like 2 days ago, said almost the same thing, where the tears were flowing. And I suggested that West Indian kids, all West Indian kids perhaps at some point in their life, have to go see some kind of psychologist, because the little child that they were, you have to address that little child at some point. You know, as a West Indian kid, you know, that little child has so many different kinds of abuses. And unless you go and fix that, I think you have to address that, because you're not going to go very far. The tears are going to come and you won't know why. And perhaps it's issues from those kind of times. And you see it all the time with big men. I remember when Carlos Santana, one of my favorite artists, he was going through those kind of crises in his late 50s, with issues from when he was a child. So sometimes you have to do all of that. And just to throw this out there, there's this thing called the Primal Scream, where we have lost the ability to be able to scream like a baby. And there are certain kind of therapies where they teach you again how to do that. I just put that out there, and I'll say goodnight, and nice to see all of you, and keep it going.
A little bit of what Danielle started, and something that she said, I was like, wow. So this is going to be quick. So, you know, we're talking about stillness in the womb. This is the reason why we're all born with pure potentiality. We're all born to be great already. So by the time we come, based on the environment, based on the situation, now we have to start reprogramming our minds. So when she said that, I was like, wow, that makes full sense in terms of the full circle, right? You're born that way. So you came from a still moment.
Yeah. So I can't even believe the hour is almost up, because this segment is only supposed to be an hour. I want to share my opinion, if I may, and then I wanted to read what you had put on your form. So with regards to the meditation and the deep breathing, I started doing that seriously last year. We started a yoga program through this organization, and we meet every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. And maybe halfway through the program, we decided to add deep breathing to, like, that would be the last 5 minutes of the session. And the first time we did it, so it's guided, right? We find a YouTube clip and we share it, and somebody is narrating the 5 minutes while we're deep breathing, telling us to inhale, hold it, release. And when I was doing that, I started tearing up. And I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, but for whatever reason, it had a visceral reaction in my body. I started to tear up. And that happened for maybe the 3 or 4 times that we were doing it. Now I'm at the point where I'm past that, but it really just speaks to how profound it is to really just stay still. I'm a mother of 5. I don't know what it means. And all my kids are under 13, right? 12 down to 7, sorry. I don't know what it means to be still. Definitely not right now. You know, so for somebody to tell me to just stay still for 5 minutes, it was really profound. And then we had another member who shared with me that she had some childhood traumas. And that's why she joined the yoga, to kind of maybe help her with that. She couldn't get through the 5 minutes of deep breathing. She started to bawl tears. Because I don't know if it brought up memories, like for her to just sit still and think about what happened in her childhood. And that's what my dad was saying, right? To address the child, you know, the little child in you, right? And since then, unfortunately, sad to say, she never came back to the yoga because it scared her away from doing it. So I think that the stillness is really, it's looking inward. And I found a lot of people are really afraid to look at themselves. We can look at everybody else and pass judgments and say what we want about everybody else, right? But when we're asked now to actually look in the mirror, right, or look at ourselves, all of a sudden it's like we're deer in headlights, you know? So anyway, so yeah, that's my 2 cents with the stillness. That is like, that if you can do that, it doesn't matter what type of other tangible success you get. If you can't look at yourself in the mirror, right? Or look at yourself and assess yourself, then you're not ever going to be successful. That's my opinion. So I want to hear, so the feedback on the form now.
And Camille, just before you do that, just for me, I think the most challenging part right now is the judgment, right? And that's why I kind of embrace it. And I love that, you know, he says to repeat to yourself in the morning and as many times as possible, today I shall judge nothing that occurs. Because that's hard. It's hard to do. Even
what does that mean, Mark? Judge?
With respect to my job, I think it's difficult as well. Just passing judgment on
analyzing, I think he said, like he actually broke down, right?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but yes, analyzing different things, just judging good or bad.
That's what Carol was saying earlier.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's
trying not to say good or bad because that's all perspective.
Yeah, but for me, I'm just like, I'm trying, and you know, as we talk, you know, we always have opinions on certain things, and that's to me is the judgment, right? Let's try to stop that, right? So
we only have 3 minutes left, and I really want to finish up the agenda here. Sorry, Carol, let me just finish this up. And I know Mark was saving to read that quote by the Australian writer, Mark. If you have it there, we can close it off with that. But let me just get to the lessons that the readers put on their form. So I asked the question of Oliver, Mark, and Danielle, what 2 lessons have you learned from this chapter? And Danielle said, to be committed to the journey of meditation and connecting daily with spirit self. The soul recognizes soul. We're just packaged differently, okay? And then Oliver said his lesson was ego-based power, in other words, object referral, is short-lived, ! Self-power, in other words, self-referral, is permanent. Mark said his 2 lessons. Number 1, the importance of self-meditation and practicing silence. And number 2, working to experience non-judgment. Those were his 2 takeaways. And my 2 takeaways or 2 lessons was the concept of the space between thoughts Because what Deepak was mentioning in that chapter was that that's where your field of possibilities is. It's that space in between your next thought, from what, as one thought ends to the beginning of another thought, that little space there is what you're trying to maximize. And then number 2 is stillness and meditation silences turbulence, so we can introduce our true intentions. And I think Mark mentioned, for example, the ripple in the water. Do you remember that metaphor he mentioned, ripple in the water, with throwing a stone versus throwing the Empire State Building? Oliver or Danielle, do you remember that metaphor he used?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, go ahead if you can just summarize that metaphor.
Oh, basically, you talk about where you throw the stone and there's a ripple effect. Yeah, so what that really means to me is that, and it's both ways too. So, that's once you interrupt that stillness, right, you're gonna get the ripple effect of you can't just break the stillness, right? On the other side now, the whole point of the stillness is to create calmness in you. So when you see visually, when you see the waters rippling, right, it causes many different effects around you. It causes so many different things around you when you actually break that silence. That's what I get from that section.
Thank you, Oliver. And to close off the segment, Mark, do you have that quote handy?
I do if he doesn't.
I do have it.
Okay.
Do you mind if I just read it, Danielle?
Yes, please.
All right.
Now
So
you have to read it. You have to read it to them like how you read it to me, eh?
Okay. So there's a gentleman by the name of Franz Kafka, an Australian philosopher and poet, and he once said, "You need not leave your room. Remain sitting at your table and listen. You need not even listen. Simply wait. You need not even wait. Just learn to become quiet and still and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet."
Hey.
Is that how you read it to Camille?
I
don't think so.
It was exactly like that. But
I don't think so.
yeah. The pressure. It's the pressure.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I
You know
love
what?
it.
I love that statement, and I'm gonna print it off and keep it beside me because I like that.
Yeah, if you can do that, oh, that'll be powerful.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add it to my vision board wall.
Yep.
So this concludes our chapter 1 discussion. Congratulations to our readers. I invite new readers for chapter 2 and beyond if you're interested. It's called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And it just leads to a really dynamic discussion, right? Like if we could hear Carol and Ingrid and David's feedback on what the chapter is, I'm successful just by hearing from the different perspectives. It makes me further reach my full potential. So thank you to Danielle, Oliver, and Mark. We continue.
You want to reveal what the next chapter is?
Then what is it? I don't have it handy. Anybody?
I think it's giving.
The law of giving.
Perfect. Just in time for Easter.
Oh.
Just in time for Easter.
Aligned.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's I always say this, and I don't